Brooklyn Lou, the skeptic, says, of course Hunter got a sweetheart deal. He's rich and connected. Isn't this the way the system works?
Sadly, it is. And it ought to make all of us angry because it's supposed to work the same whether you are a pauper and a homeless person living on the streets of L.A. or whether your last name is Biden. It's supposed to be the same. And when it isn't, then we don't have a justice system anymore. And that's what I think we need to be angry about. If you're a Democrat or you're a Republican or you're an independent, it shouldn't be about your politics. It ought to be about your sense of right and wrong, and everybody pays the same price. That's how it ought to work.
Okay. Anthony is asking, Governor, how can Merrick Garland continue to lie after this whistleblower came forward to Congress?
I think Merrick Garland may be, and I thought that Eric Holder was a horrible attorney general and was so biased and partisan. And he was the first really to start weaponizing the Department of Justice in a way that has continued. But Merrick Garland, all I can do is say, thank God he didn't get on the Supreme Court. You know, he was the one the Democrats were pushing to be on the Supreme Court. I'm so glad he didn't. We'd be stuck with him forever. But he's proven himself to be utterly corrupt, and smug about it. You know, it would be one thing if a person kind of was like Edwin Edwards of Louisiana. You know, he was a crook, but by golly, he didn't pretend that he wasn't. That's, you know, what you had to kind of admire about Edwin Edwards. There was no pretense about him. Boy, there's nothing but pretense about a guy like Merrick Garland. He just comes across like he's morally superior to the rest of us.
Yes.
When the whole time, you know, he's just not being straight up.
All right, a comment for you to respond to. God's Offspring says, Governor Huckabee, Adam Schiff's punishment should be to become Joe Biden and John Fetterman's stenographer.
That'd be the worst punishment of all, just trying to figure out what did they say. Here's what you could do, though. Just write a bunch of disconnected letters on a page and say, that's the way I heard it. Pretty much the way it would be.
James Casey today, why would there be a deal made when there's no benefit to the prosecution?
Because they all want to keep their jobs. It's real simple. If you're a prosecutor in the federal government and you were to really go after Hunter Biden and expose that Joe Biden was the big guy who's getting a 10% cut, what do you think happens to you? You think you get an award from this Justice Department? You think Merrick Garland calls you in and shakes your hand, says, good work there, young man? No. They'll find a way to throw you completely out. If people will remember that on July the 8th, the Huckabee show, it's during a holiday break, so we pre-taped it. It's a brand new show. But we have FBI whistleblower Stephen Friend, who's our guest. He has a brand new book out. It's just riveting. And we talk with him. And you need to see that interview because it is very powerful of what happens to you when you just raise the question, how come this is being done? Why are we doing it this way? Isn't this unfair? Don't miss that interview on July the 8th.
Okay, Ruth Ann Savory is asking, do you think that they, referring to the Bidens, are going to skate on everything?
Oh, gosh. I want to believe that at some point the evidence is going to be so overwhelming that even NBC and CBS and ABC can't keep protecting the Bidens from it. And I also think there are going to be some Democrats who will be embarrassed by it and disgusted with it all. But maybe their only way to get rid of Biden, and they know that he is not capable of serving as president. He can't make a speech. He can't walk up and down the steps. He doesn't know which way to get off the stage. And this may be their way to eventually be able to get rid of him.
Purple Haze wrote a little bit earlier asking this question. So what does this mean, really, for Adam Schiff? Will there be real punishment, or is there any kind of blemish on his record because of this?
I mean, it's a blemish on his record, but if you mean, does something happen to him? Does he have to give up a paycheck? No. And frankly, because he has no shame, most people would be, kind of, I guess, hurt, that their own peers basically said, hey, you're a crook. You're a liar. Adam Schiff doesn't care. He knows he's a liar. He's kind of proud of it. In fact, the consequence he may get out of this is being elected to the Senate in California, which is just, isn't that something? But the people of California, they'll probably elect this son of a gun and be just as proud of him as he is of his own lies. It's just nothing but remarkable.
All right, Deborah Collins writing this afternoon, Governor, how do we stand against all of this corruption as retired people with medical issues?
The only way, Deborah, is to vote and make sure everybody you know votes. The worst thing that can happen is when people say, it doesn't matter, I'm just not going to vote. That's surrender. Just get a white flag, wave it out your front door, because we only win when we vote different people in place with different policies. And it means helping your friends, relatives, and people you work with or did work with, said you're retired, so folks you used to work with, try to get information to them that is unbiased and just tells them the truth. And then make sure that they go vote. And let's vote some of these people out of office. Let's make sure we get a president who will take the vacuum cleaner to D.C. and try to get rid of some of this stuff.
Okay. Another question coming in from Brooklyn Lou, the skeptic, this afternoon. Governor, you seem like you're not running, so I do want to know if you are for holding Trump accountable for his crimes as well as the Bidens.
Sure, if you could tell me what those crimes were. I'm not convinced that there were crimes because he had records that he had in his home. That's a civil issue. It's not a criminal issue, and maybe you want to argue that point. But the Presidential Records Act has nothing to do with criminal activity. And what they're trying to get him on is the Espionage Act of 1917, which is going to be a real stretch. And don't take my word for it. I'm not a lawyer either. You're right, I'm not running, but I'm not an attorney. But I know some people who are very, very thoughtful and well-learned attorneys. Alan Dershowitz, for one. Professor emeritus from the Harvard Law School, considered one of the greatest constitutional legal minds in the world, and Jonathan Turley from Georgetown Law School, Greg Jarrett, who I know very well from Fox, but is also a longtime trial attorney, and all of them have made it very clear it's nonsensical to go after Trump for criminal charges over papers when they're doing nothing to Mike Pence, nothing to Joe Biden, who had papers that he shouldn't have had. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, look, I think Donald Trump sometimes, and not most of the time, is his own worst enemy. He will say things that are impolite and sometimes just probably not wise, and he gives his enemies a real foothold. But that doesn't make him a crook, and it certainly doesn't mean that he's trying to sell secrets to our enemies. Nobody has ever been able to say that Donald Trump tried to make financial deals with the Chinese, the Russians, or anybody else for that matter. The guy's a billionaire. He didn't need their money. So he was never trying to shake down foreign governments and get their money. And that's an important thing to consider.